Well, they might be limping into it, but regardless, the bye week is finally here for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and a team that's coming off a big win, a big road win to basically save their season. As Mike Tomlin put it, we were going with our third-string quarterback against a future Hall of Famer, and the Steelers' third-string quarterback beat the future Hall of Famer. But how much really is there room for optimism for the Pittsburgh Steelers and around Steeler Nation? All the injuries, the fact that, yes, they're in the division race, but is that more of an indictment of the division than on Pittsburgh? I'm going to answer all these questions and hopefully discuss it with you guys here on this Steelers chat edition of Mic Drop on Pittsburgh Sports Live, thanks to the signs behind me, Beaver County Auto, and of course, SteelersNow.com. I am your host, Mike Asti, and, well, the Steelers limp into the bye week. They get a big victory over the Chargers, and really, from jump, were outplaying, I almost said San Diego, but Los Angeles, in Los Angeles, even though it wasn't really a home field advantage, as there were more Steeler fans there. And I got some flack for this on Twitter, but that's not necessarily with Steeler fans traveling well, as much as there are now former Pittsburghers who live out there, either live out there or live out west, live closer. And also there are a lot of Steeler fans around the country, and this goes back to the 70s, that are just Steeler fans in general without even ever having been to Pittsburgh. So regardless, the Steelers had a large contingent of home fans there, and they were playing in what basically was like a soccer-like atmosphere. Some may love it, some may not. I didn't really enjoy it that much for an NFL situation. It felt small time, and when they get into that new stadium with the Rams, they're going to feel very, very big time, but it will remain to be seen if they can garner enough fan interest out there, because the Rams have most of it from history, from playing in LA so long with the older heads, and the fact they just went to a Super Bowl. The Chargers have that LA history way back, very briefly, and then not much fandom in general out there. The Raiders were a team they wanted instead. They're not there. They're going to be in Vegas. I'll digress on all of that for the purpose of this. But regardless, the Steelers get a big victory. It technically is on the road over Phillip Rivers, over a Charger team that's coming off a playoff appearance, even though they've kind of underachieved in those postseasons. And they've had a roller coaster ride as well this year. So the Pittsburgh Steelers manage a Duck Dynasty. They managed to take their Duck Dynasty in Pittsburgh all the way out to Los Angeles, and they managed to have the Duck quack the last quack and defeat the Chargers with the win. Unfortunately for the Steelers, how happy can you be? Because not only do they see injuries to James Conner in the game, Juju didn't look all that healthy in the game. You're seeing an injury to Devin Bush in the game after he started off guns blazing, creating turnovers and making every tackle it seemed was possible. And then Stephon Tuitt ends up with a pectoral injury. That ends up being the severe injury. That ends up being the problem. And he ends up now being put on IR, and he will miss the rest of the season. So Tuitt is out for the year, needs surgery on the torn pec. We have it there, SteelersNow.com. We have the report. We have what the Steelers are doing with the roster. We have all that analysis there on the website. But I can also do it here for you now on the show, and I want to get what your thoughts are. So feel free to join me here in the chat. Usually do have some chat activity. Been better some weeks than others, but there's usually chat activity. It sometimes takes me a while to get this going, to get the chatters out there. I see some of you watching. Feel free to jump in. You can tell me I'm an idiot. You can tell me I'm wrong. You can praise me, which I don't get that much on social media, certainly not on Twitter, but I do get it here, oddly enough, so the compliments are flying. We know a lot of you out there, sports fans, don't like to praise members of sports media, even if you do agree with them, so it happens here. I don't mind it. Throw it out there again, and join me. Because the Steelers are in their bye week, okay? This is the Pittsburgh Steelers team that going into the bye week, they have a couple victories, okay? Not so much to be proud of in terms of a victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. Basically, maybe the worst team in football. You could argue them and Miami. Steelers 2-4 overall right now. And then have that victory against the Chargers. Yes, it's a Charger team that should be good, but they're also been a roller coaster ride. They have their issues, and that was kind of a home game, even though it was in Los Angeles. So how much room for optimism is it? And then how much will that injury of Tuitt impact the team? And this has been a weird debate, but Steeler fans and sports fans love the quarterback controversy and to debate in general. Who should start and who should command the troops Week 8 onward? Which Week 8 kind of gives the Steelers back-to-back buys, as you would assume. One of those two teams I mentioned, one of the worst teams in football in Miami, couldn't even beat the Redskins. Actually, maybe they really did win the game because they have a better odds now for the number one draft pick. The Redskins, unfortunately, winning for their fan base. Regardless, though, Miami may be the worst team in football, right up there with the Bengals, and they already beat Cincinnati handily, but Miami's really, really bad as well. Minkah Fitzpatrick gets to face his former team now. Monday Night Football after the bye, so the Steelers will get a long week following the bye week against a really, really, really awful team. And I'm just not being mean, but a really awful team. And how you doing, Cedric? I've seen you on the chat before, so I'm doing well. I can't complain. Little bit less work for me, of course, covering the Steelers here in Pittsburgh media because of the bye. I'm still doing these shows, though, for you, but I don't mind it. We never sleep overall in the outlet, none of us here individually or collectively, but a little bit less intensive because of the bye. So I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to this break. Got some friends' weddings I'm attending here in the fall season, oddly. Went to a pumpkin patch last weekend. It's getting crazy, getting ready for Halloween, but going to appreciate each holiday to its fullest, and I will maybe do that rant on a future show, how Halloween, Thanksgiving, then Christmas, I'm not skipping any of them, and I'm going to appreciate Thanksgiving to its fullest more than any of them because it is the greatest of the holidays. It is the greatest of all time, and too many of you just skip right through it and bypass it and go right to Christmas and kind of forget about it, have your turkey, and that's it. No. I tell my best friend this all the time. You got to appreciate it. Regardless, though, it's a Steeler team that is right in the division race. Steelers will finish 8-8. Okay, I mean, again, 8-8 wouldn't be bad from where they started. This is a team that started 0-3, remember, then was 1-4. 8-8 wouldn't be horrendous from where they started, but 8-8 probably doesn't get you into the postseason. You have the Ravens, of course, who you figure to be the class of the division. They're the defending division champion. They beat out the Steelers last year. And then you have the Cleveland Browns, who, like Pittsburgh, has been a roller coaster ride. They haven't really figured it out between Baker and Odell Beckham Jr. OBJ not getting the passes that you would figure he would want and that he's accustomed to. Kind of waiting until that ticking time bomb erupts there and they have tons of drama. That was the other way things could go this year for Cleveland. Baker not looking like he did last year. I don't know if the fact that he spread it around so much last year and now has an all-pro receiver to rely on, that actually sometimes is a negative because you have to find that receiver at one point rather than just finding whoever's open. He's gonna want those receptions. I don't know what's going on. The defense hasn't been as good either, especially as good as you thought it would be. But they're still looking just as good, if not better, than Pittsburgh based on level of play and based on what's gone on. They're in that division race, but 8-8 won't get you there. All teams are happy to play Miami. Yeah, Miami's the worst team in football. So this could be, in terms of going towards the optimist direction, we'll see how many of you are there, this could be okay. You get a victory with your third-string quarterback on the road. I know it's Los Angeles. I know there's a lot of Steelers fans there, but you have your third-string quarterback facing a Hall of Famer, okay? And remember, the Steelers have had 3 different starting quarterbacks start a game this season, okay? 2 of them won. Ben, the future Hall of Famer, is one that has not picked up a victory. Granted, out for the year, and he did face the Patriots. But point of it is, you've had 2 backups with no experience, nothing there really on the NFL resume. Definitely not Devlin Hodges. More experience calling ducks. He's a professional duck hunter and a better resume at that. And he gets whole duck mania and the fans go crazy, partly because he has the cool factor a little bit, and he kind of walked in there and carried himself very, very well in that situation, acting like a boss, like the T-shirt said, kind of sticking it in their nose. Your fans are going to like that, especially when you have a unique craft outside the sport as well as a duck hunter, a duck caller. Regardless, gets the victory, so that really carries on Duck Mania. And the Steelers now, with all the injuries, with the roller coaster ride, with the fact that they haven't played that well, and I know they've played good teams, and they lose to Seattle, who's a good contending team, lose to the Patriots, who are the defending champs, Brady, Belichick. You lose to the Ravens, who you figure are going to win the division, even though they've had their issues with Lamar Jackson and company, and Lamar playing really well this year, even better than last year. Okay, chalk it up to maybe they've faced really, really good teams. They haven't beat great teams, but they did beat a playoff team in L.A., in the Chargers. So, hey, maybe that's just the schedule. It's going to get easier as we go. You're going to see Miami there, as you said it. You're going to see the Jets way down the end of the stretch. They're not good either, despite their win over the Cowboys. You're going to see the Browns. You're going to see another game with the Ravens. And the Ravens took overtime facing the Steelers' third-string quarterback that second half and in OT without the Juju fumble, which I detailed on a past show. I gave him his just due criticism, but regardless, without that fumble, the Steelers maybe win that game. And there's been controversy that kind of hurt them in some of those games. The Bengals will come up again. There's going to be wins on that schedule remaining, and there's been mitigating circumstances to this point with all the injuries. Okay, that's glass half full. That's optimism. It exists. It exists despite the injury. But to kind of jumpstart this, I'm not as optimistic, okay? I'm just not as optimistic, and I'm not trying to play the heel here as I sometimes do. I'm not trying to ruffle the feathers as I don't mind doing. I'm telling you how it is, okay? I'm just being real with you because there's reasons, and it's not just the fact that, yeah, they're 2-4, and yes, they've had a difficult schedule, and yes, they're still in the division race, and there's nobody really to be terrified from, and the AFC isn't even that strong outside of New England. But this is a reason. This is a reason, guys. This is absolutely a reason. And we all know the Browns are overrated there. I see it on the chat. Yeah, the Browns I do feel, are an overrated team. I mean, I said it even going months back 7 months ago when those moves were made. I said it. That, yeah, it helps the team. Yes, you want stars. Yes, you want weapons. It's not like you don't want OBJ. Same thing with AB in a way, but less drama, apparently. As shocking as that sounds. But it could help. Baker could go through a regression. That could be normal for a sophomore quarterback. It could be harder for him trying to work a all-pro receiver into the offense and make sure he gets his receptions. There have been additions they've made defensively, but this team has never won before. They've never won individually. They've never really won together. The franchise hasn't won. There's lack of continuity. They got a new head coach again. Maybe he's not the guy for this team with all that kind of pressure. Nothing's guaranteed, and people were throwing him in the Super Bowl. So I'm with you there. The Browns are a bit overrated, and they've been exposed. Tennessee's not that good. They beat them. They've been exposed a little bit. But in terms of, and going back to the Steelers now, in terms of the rest of the season, in terms of where the Steelers are now, yes, there's room for optimism because, as you said, the Browns are overrated. The Ravens are good, but they've also been a bit of a bumpy ride at times. Okay, they barely beat Pittsburgh even going into overtime against a third-string quarterback in that second half moving forward, and the backup ahead of that. It wasn't like Ben played that game at all. There's question marks around the Baltimore Ravens. That fan base still doesn't love Lamar Jackson, no matter how many TD passes he throws. And yes, he's had a great year, an MVP-style type of year so far. But how long does that style last you long-term? It might get through this year, but long-term does it last? He's an injury waiting to happen. The fact that he still doesn't really take care of his body and runs maybe as his first option, which is a concern. So the Bengals suck. But, yeah, there's optimism. But losing Stephon Tuitt is a big deal, okay? He actually, and if you go through that article, he was having a career year, okay? He was already 3.5 sacks. He already was having a career year in terms of sacks, in terms of tackle for a loss, in terms of his overall level of play. This is a guy who was critical to this team, and I've said this on past shows, not just for what he was doing, and he was having a career year again, but the fact of TJ Watt can't do it all. And one of the critical parts of the Steelers defense is the pass rush. Okay? A pass rush and a defense that actually hasn't been great and did cost them some games early and certainly has been a problem the last few years and cost them that playoff game against the Jags. I've harped on that for years. But it hasn't been as bad as maybe some would have thought the last couple weeks. It actually has got better. There was production from Joe Hayden. There was tremendous production from Devin Bush, who right now is the defensive rookie of the year, I'd imagine, for my money, based on what he's doing to cause turnovers, based on his overall tackles, based on just getting involved and knowing the defense and already feeling like he's making an impact right now. Started off sluggish, but Devin Bush, for me, is the favorite, and I'm going to say he's going to win it, defensive rookie of the year. I'll go that far. I said it a while ago, so I'll pick it again. And TJ Watt's already looking like he's building a Hall of Fame career. Joe Hayden, when healthy, is making plays. Justin Lane's even out there now. The secondary is getting better, but Steven Nelson, in addition to it, is also hurt. That's a big deal. There's been injuries throughout this defense, and when healthy, they're okay, but not dominant. But there's been a few dominant players, like a Watt, like a Devin Bush at times. They can make plays here or there, and nobody's really playing amazing defense in the league. I get it. But you lose to it now, that puts more pressure on Bud Dupree. That puts more pressure on TJ. That puts more pressure in general on this defense. Because that puts somebody else now needs to generate the pass rush. Somebody else needs to capitalize off of it. If TJ Watt generates it now, where DeWitt's not obviously going to get that sack, somebody else is going to have to be out there to capitalize and finish the job. And it's going to be a rough go. Because the Steelers cannot afford to be depleted in terms of linebackers, in terms of that defense. And that is the exact spot there they're having the issue in terms of injuries. You trade up for Devin Bush, you finally replace Ryan Shazier, you figure he's making an impact now, but then you lose somebody else on the defense. You lose the defensive end. You lose other linebackers. You have a depleted unit overall, and the pass rush is key for going at quarterbacks like a Phillip Rivers. Okay, maybe they're going to have easier quarterbacks down the stretch, but you're dealing with tons of injuries, especially on the defense, especially on the pass rush, and that's going to be a problem. So the Steelers could be vulnerable against bad teams even without being able to generate that pass rush and making it easier on the opposing quarterback, no matter who it is. Now, separate from that, and this will kind of bring up this point here, Baker needs to shut up and play football. I might get to that in a second. Baker, I don't know if he needs to shut up. I kind of like his big mouth a little bit. I like the cockiness. I like the swag. But I might get into that in a second. The Steelers, and this is going to be a problem for anybody out there, and I do see a lot of you out there watching this, so feel free to jump in the chat. I see Cedric and a few others have joined me, so there's more of you out there who are keeping silent. You're welcome to talk, okay? I don't need to keep silent right now, even though I talk enough for everybody, generally speaking. Devlin Hodges has won a game. Didn't play amazing, but Duck Mania was there. Threw a touchdown, threw a pick. Managed the game certainly with the best of them and did what he had to do. He's a third-string quarterback for crying out loud. Mason Rudolph, he threw some bangers. He threw some passes. He was able to kind of get unleashed prior to getting hurt against Baltimore a little bit. And when he's unleashed, he's shown he has that arm strength. He has the awareness. He has the ability to throw the ball downfield. They kept the reins on him a little bit, which I also defended, was some were upset about, but it's similar to how the Steelers dealt with Big Ben early in his career. You don't want to throw the kitchen sink and open up the playbook too much when you have a backup in there. It's okay to treat him with kid gloves a little bit, but you can't go too far with it to where then you can't let the offense move and to where you're handcuffing him a little bit. But he was not the last time out there, and he was finding a sense of chemistry. Granted, that chemistry included James Washington, we've seen from preseason to now, and he's out with an injury as well. So you're losing him. The Steelers offensively have dealt with injuries, in addition to having two quarterbacks, both being backups, come in there and having two different games this year where your starting quarterback going into the game ends up getting hurt and not playing the rest of the way. And I get that you could see some optimism in terms of, okay, they're able to win a game, they're able to play well in those games. Devlin Hodges did play well. Mason Rudolph did play well. Even in spotty starts when they weren't winning, Mason Rudolph played real well in the second half against Seattle, even though they didn't end up winning that game. But your record is still your record. And you got those losses on the board. You can't afford too many losses. They probably can't lose more than 3 more times this year or the playoffs are over. Even with a winnable division, even with a depleted conference, 8-8 is not going to do it. You can't figure that. And these are young quarterbacks that are eventually going to make mistakes. They haven't now, but they may creep up. And the other issue being that you have some uncertainty here. I mean, who do you start between Devlin Hodges and Mason Rudolph? If both are healthy, and that's critical. For me, though, it's clear. It's clear. If Mason Rudolph is healthy, he starts. Mason Rudolph was ahead of Devlin Hodges on the depth chart, of course. That's why if Big Ben was healthy, you would be playing him, regardless of what happened last year. You go down the line. But Mason Rudolph showed he had some moxie. He showed he had some confidence. He was getting compared to Tom Brady in terms of how he carried himself and even how he played those first few games in terms of compared to Tom Brady replacing Bledsoe all those many moons ago. Obviously, that was a bit much. Obviously, that's kind of crazy. No one's saying he's going to become the greatest of all time. But he was playing well, and he was doing more than managing the game. Hodges managed the game, okay? Duck managed the game. He quacked himself managing the game. You can throw up the memes. It's funny on social media when he starts. He's a fun-loving guy. Him and the Penguins now have a better relationship after we unearthed the tweet against the Pittsburgh Penguins years ago. Honestly, kind of surprised he was watching the Cup final that year, Pens and Predators being from Alabama. I don't know if that's a hockey hotbed. It certainly isn't. Regardless, okay, it's fun to watch him, but Mason Rudolph's your guy. Mason Rudolph's the guy that everybody loved at camp. Mason Rudolph's the guy that clearly beat out Josh Dobbs at camp in the preseason. Mason Rudolph's the guy that many thought would actually have a chance at an NFL career. Okay? Mason might be a little gun shy. That's true, and that's maybe an argument for Devlin Hodges because Devlin Hodges was healthy and he just won a game. And I understand that Mason will get better with each game. I agree. That's going to happen. But here's my issue with Mason might be a little gun shy. Okay? This is a team that is 2-4. I know the schedule was rough. I get all of that. You want to have a glass half full. Okay. Start duck until further notice. I hear it, and that's going to be some opinions. I understand that Mason Rudolph got hurt last outing. Yeah, why is this a question? Doug didn't make the team for a reason. See, that's going on the other end of it and more agreeing with what I'm saying. It shouldn't be a debate, honestly. It really shouldn't be a debate. I don't think it's going to be, guys. Regardless of what you want, Mason Rudolph's going to start if healthy. And it's already pointing in that direction. If Mason Rudolph is healthy, or at least healthy enough to go, because obviously he's coming off an injury, against a really, really bad team in Miami, or against Miami, it's home, Monday Night Football, you're gonna start Mason Rudolph. Number one, as I kept saying, it's home. Okay, it's not in Miami. It's in Pittsburgh. It's at Heinz Field. That's a plus, so he doesn't have to worry about traveling, because a lot of injured players don't travel. That's why Ben wasn't out there in L.A. Shouldn't have been a controversy. That's why he wasn't out there. A lot of players that severely hurt don't travel. Mason Rudolph doesn't have to worry about traveling. That's harder on the body when you're injured and not 100% healthy. So it's a home game. He'll have the crowd support, which he may also have in L.A., but they're done playing in L.A., at least against the Chargers. They got the Rams. And he will get better with each game. So he was a guy that was building a resume, was playing well, was playing better and better each week. And then you see the injury, then you see the problem, and then you're a little concerned. I get it, but you can't hold back when you have nothing else to lose. This team can't lose any more games, really. They can't afford any other problems. They can't afford controversy. They can't afford injuries. They need to take advantage of opportunities right away. They can't afford not to. And if Mason Rudolph, I'm not saying play a guy who's hurt and you're risking his life. If he's healthy enough to go, if the doctors clear him, might not be 100%, but if they clear him and say he can play, because no one in the NFL is really 100%, then you have to start Mason Rudolph. He was your backup. He was the one who won the backup job. Devlin Hodges was fourth string. He didn't even make the team. He was on the practice squad. That's exactly what you said there. I get to it's out for the season. Yeah, it's going to be a big problem. Scan back to the early portion of the show where I discussed that. That's going to hurt the Steelers' defense. It's going to hurt the pass rush, and that's part of why I'm not optimistic about the rest of the year like many of you still are after the win. And we've had the training wheels on Mason Rudolph. Yeah, and again, and that's the other problem. They may stay on because of the injury. I don't know if that's going to be an issue there, but they were kind of waning off the last time he was out there. They're going to obviously be on Hodges. And Hodges looked okay. But I think the fact that everybody loves Hodges so much, the fact that he is this duck caller, the fact that he is cool, the fact that he wore that T-shirt and has that swag and doesn't care, kind of a I don't give a you-know-what attitude he has as the third-string quarterback, as a guy who actually is a fourth-string quarterback at best, but became a third-string quarterback, and now the starter, it's a weird journey from Stanford to the NFL and to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But he didn't even get 200 yards passing. They did keep the offense in. It was mostly a run-first offense. James Conner was their MVP on offense, not really Devlin Hodges. Conner finally stepped up after the fumble a couple weeks ago and not really playing that well. He answered myself and many of the critics in that game. He was a big factor. Give him his credit there. But they talk about the handcuffs being on Mason Rudolph. They also were on Devlin Hodges, okay? It wasn't like Devlin Hodges was dealing with a complexity of a playbook. He wasn't dealing with what Big Ben would deal with in a playbook. So, okay, you can keep getting that, but you got to take a risk at some point. If Mason Rudolph's healthy, he's the better quarterback. He's shown he's the better quarterback. He has the better ability. He has the stronger arm. He's played longer. I think the team probably would rally around him more, even though they also love Duck. He's just the better player. So you play the better player if healthy. You got to start Mason Rudolph if healthy. Okay, you just have to. And I get the debate. I get the debate. I really do. I really do. Okay? But Mason Rudolph was playing really, really well and shouldn't lose his job to a third, fourth string quarterback, basically. It was a noticeable difference when Tua went out. We might be in trouble. Tua had always hurt. He is too soft. I mean, he does get hurt often, but it's unfortunate. He was having the best start of his career, in a single season of his career so far this year. 3.5 sacks, all the tackles for loss. It's in the article on Steelers Now. Okay. It's unfortunate because I'm not calling a guy soft, but he does get hurt often, and that will put the team in trouble. I think that will negatively affect the team 100%, and I think many are downgrading that a little bit. That's going to be a problem. He needs some stem cell shots. Okay, I'm not going to play a doctor here, guys. I'm not a doctor, and I don't play a doctor on the radio or on YouTube or whatever you want to call this, or TV. I'm sorry. Way to fix things, yeah, that's going to be left for the doctors. And yes, he does get hurt often. That is going to be a problem. But again, he was having the best start of his career so far this year. It's unfortunate. He was a big part of that defense, and now so much more is going to rely on Watt and company that it could ruin things. That was one of the guys you didn't want to lose, honestly. I like Duck, but not over Mason. Yeah, again, this isn't an indictment of Devlin Hodges, okay? To say that I want Mason Rudolph to keep starting if he's healthy, after how he played, went in there, he played better than Devlin Hodges, be fair. You may like Hodges more. He's maybe cooler. He's kind of fun to watch him. You like being on Twitter when he's out there and all his pictures of ducks all over the place. We threw one up. So did I. But Mason Rudolph's been the better quarterback. It's clear. So Mason Rudolph starts if healthy. Just evident. And a way to wean him in is against Miami. If you're worrying about shaking rust off, like somebody said earlier in the chat, you got the Dolphins. That's a bad defense. It's a bad team. You figure to get a lead early. You figure to move down the field regardless of who's out there. You figure to beat them. Either one of these guys should beat them. Hell, myself and a few others might be able to get that. I mean, they're bad, okay? Obviously, they would beat myself, and they would beat every college team out there, too. They beat Bama. I don't want to get into that argument. But they're really, really bad in terms of the NFL. And that maybe is almost like another bye. It's like a practice in a way. I mean, if you lose that game, the season's over. It doesn't matter. But both would win that game, and that's how maybe you guide Mason Rudolph in there gingerly against a really bad team of the Dolphins. So it's great. They should be thankful that they're having a bye and then the Dolphins. It's like two byes, especially now dealing with all the injuries. But there's still the fact that I'm not going to be as optimistic, even though some want to bring all this up, because look at past years. Lose to the Raiders, tie the Browns, lose to Denver, lose to Baltimore when you shouldn't have lost, blow a 16-point lead to the Chargers. That's just last year. They're vulnerable to get upset. They always are. So you can't chalk up all those games rest of the year as wins, okay? Not only that, but the record is still what it is. And they faced good teams. The Niners, another good team they lost to. And maybe they should have beat some of these great teams. Should have maybe beat the Niners. Should have maybe beat Seattle. But every team's going to deal with controversies like they had against Seattle, the pass interference. It sucks in general, being able to review that. I hate it, but it's happened against every team. And the Niner game, you can blame nobody but yourself. They generated 5 turnovers. I mean, they couldn't do the last few years. They finally are generating turnovers and forcing turnovers on defense. But you're only scoring 6 points off those turnovers. It doesn't matter who's quarterback. That's unacceptable, and that's not going to beat anybody. You have to capitalize when you create those turnovers, and generating only 6 points off those 5 turnovers, with 4 of those in the first half, you're not going to beat anybody. The Niners shouldn't beat anybody turning it over 5 times, but the Steelers didn't generate enough points off those turnovers, which makes the turnovers a moot point if you can't score off of them, clearly. Love your show. Again, I said this before. Many of us in sports media don't feel the love on Twitter, don't feel the love on social media, no matter what we're doing. I'm liking it here, because you get the compliments every now and then through these chats. I mean, I do shows in general, they're not always live, but when I do the live, you get some compliments mixed in here, so I appreciate it there, Wayndom. Waymond Johnson, I'm going to say the Waymond Johnson, I'm going to probably bungle that up, and yes, I said bungled, but I love your show, I appreciate it. So how about that? Thank you. By the way, I also saw somebody bring up Tomlin earlier. I'm not going to get into the whole Tomlin to the Redskins and all those rumors on this show. Why? Because I dealt with it last week. So go back and listen to Pittsburgh Sports Live's Mic Drop via Steeler Now last week. It's one of the last ones throughout the Mic Drop section on Pittsburgh Sports Live, as well as you can find at SteelersNow.com. You can find all these Steelers-related shows on that particular website and whatever the topic is on the corresponding website from the channel and from our family of networks. But Tomlin's future was discussed ad nauseum all the way through. And I also brought this up on Twitter earlier, but the last thing I'll say on it right now until there gets to be more news, I'm not disrespecting Tomlin's legacy to say this either, as some may argue. Tomlin won a championship, been to 2 Super Bowls, led the team to playoff victories, playoff appearances, division titles, and hasn't been under 500 his whole career. I think he does get a bad rep in general, despite missing last year and maybe underachieving with all the talent. He's not Belichick, though, who's had a stranglehold, but he's been damn good and basically a Hall of Fame resume. I'm not trying to disrespect his legacy in Pittsburgh, but there's a shelf life for everybody. Nobody can be around anywhere forever. Nobody has the honor of an eternal job, okay? Nobody should have an eternal job. Certainly not a head coach in the National Football League or anywhere. No coach should be anywhere eternally or forever. There is no lifelong jobs in the National Football League. And maybe his welcome has been worn out. Maybe just finally time to move on and have the tenure close. It's not disrespecting him. He had to deal with a lot of drama. He's maybe somehow, and I'm not optimistic they're going to get in the playoffs at all because they have a high mountain to climb from that record, and the rest of the schedule is not guaranteed, even though some want to say it is. But he has taken a team with all these injuries and with backup quarterbacks to a 2-4 record who's right in the division race. Nothing, 2-4 is 2-4, but backup quarterbacks, a third-string quarterback started a game, all the injuries. Not many teams would even be here in terms of in the division race with their third-string quarterback, who was the last guy to play for the Steelers. They go back to the backup, sure, but Ben's still out. Most guys, Aaron Rodgers is out for Green Bay. They're going to be right in the toilet, for example. So I get it, and he deserves some credit there. But if the Washington Redskins, if he wins out the rest of the year or gets them into the playoffs or impresses and somebody wants to come calling and pull what happened with Tampa Bay trading for John Gruden many years ago and eventually winning a Super Bowl after Gruden was traded, they traded for him from the Raiders. And that included multiple first-round picks, I get it. And that was a coach who had not yet won a championship and then would win one with the Buccaneers. But if if the Redskins come calling, Tomlin didn't sign a multiple-year extension, it was a 1-year extension. So that was different. He didn't like talking about it in camp, but that was different. I said I wouldn't get into this, but I guess I am. I guess I'm getting into it, even though I also did get into it last week, so you have more in-depth there. But here I am again, getting into it. Try to avoid the Tomlin topic, but I can't, because you guys keep asking. Can't avoid it. I'm sure we won't the rest of the year either way on how this rest of that season goes. If it doesn't go well, people are going to want to fire him. They're never going to fire a head coach. It's not what the Rooneys do. But if it goes well, maybe the Redskins or somebody else. The Redskins fit because of his son being at Maryland, because another historic franchise, because it's not too far away, because it's a project, but he would maybe relish that. Knowing him, that's not a bad fit, really, even though they're in disarray in general. I could see him wanting that job for the challenge. At least he's already won one championship. And Dan Snyder is crazy and would do certain things, and you never know, and he's a guy who would trade for a head coach. Strazi hasn't done it yet. Where if the Redskins, for example, who are going to have a top 10, maybe even a top 5, they still, for crying out loud, could have the top overall pick, despite beating Miami. If he wants to offer a first-round pick, if he wants to offer a first and a second, if he wants to offer a first next year, and whatever that is, top 5 pick, top 3 pick, and then a first another year later, whatever you want to say, or even the first-round pick because of how high it's going to be, for Tomlin, there's really not a coach in this league, and I said this on Twitter, kind of shut this debate up a little bit, and the haters coming at me. There's not a coach in this league. This is not to disrespect Tomlin again. I'm not like some of the fans who want to do that. There's not a coach in this league outside of Belichick, okay, outside of the greatest coach of all time, who I wouldn't trade for a first-round pick, especially a top 10, especially a top 5, especially multiple first-round picks. That's what Gruden went for. If that's what Tomlin goes for, if there's multiple first-round picks from the Redskins who are bad this year, looking like top 5 or top 3, could very well be very, very bad again next year, could be top 10, top 5 again, for a head coach, for Tomlin, even the success he's had, yeah, I'd do it. Yeah, I do it. If the team needs to get better, the team's dealt with injuries, the team's not making the playoffs probably this year, didn't make it last year with all that talent. Eventually the era is going to close with Ben, even if he wants to come back next year. He doesn't have that many more years left, and he's just coming off an injury. It's now, and I said this on a past show, it's the Devin Bush era, based on what we were seeing so far on the field for him. Probably Defensive Rookie of the Year. Him and Juju, if he can get his act together, but Juju is dealing with double coverage now that AB dealt with before, so that's a concern. But I would do it. Okay, I would do it because there's not many coaches that I would keep and avoid that type of return. I mean, that's a lot in return in the National Football League. A first-round pick can be very, very impactful right away. Look at Devin Bush. Look at what's happened throughout the history of the Steelers. Now, I will say there, I can see Cowher coming back. No. Cowher's not coming back. Cowher doesn't want to come back. I can't see them hiring him again. Yes, he's a Hall of Famer. Yes, he won that Super Bowl. Yes, I get it was the 90s. Yes, I get he didn't have Big Ben as a Hall of Famer. Yes, he did underachieve in some of those AFC title games. Yes, he still went to 2 Super Bowls. Yes, he's beloved because he's from Crafton. The Crafton boy lived a dream. He has the Yinzer accent. And he got honored already at halftime of one of these games this year that I was watching in the press box for. Great. He's loving himself on TV. Okay, he's enjoying himself there. That's where he belongs. He's done. The NFL head coaching career should be over. I don't think they're going to call Tomlin. I don't want them to call Tomlin. That's done. Cowher. Cowher's not coming out of retirement. I don't want Cowher. The Steelers don't want Cowher. The Cowher thing's put to bed. Cowher's not coaching anymore, and Cowher's not going to be the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, regardless of what happens with Tomlin. Okay? Whether he's traded, whether he gets fired, it ain't going to be Cowher. And I'll get to something there in a second, but I want to first touch on Mike McCarthy. And I touched on this last week, but some of these are new topics, so I don't mind going into this a little bit more. And I'm not going to do a very, very long show here on the chat, so a little bit longer we'll see. As I touched on everything so far at least, so we'll see where this goes. How active you guys are there. Maybe we'll see how long I keep this going for the evening. Mike McCarthy, nah. Mike McCarthy had a very similar resume to Mike Tomlin. Both winning a championship. Tomlin been to 2. McCarthy obviously beating the Steelers, going to only the 1. But AFC Championship game appearances otherwise. Had a Hall of Fame quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, like Tomlin had most of his time with Big Ben. Yes, there was issues defensively that maybe hurt the team. Yes, they never really got a running game, and the GMs didn't really want to add that many pieces for a while. They now have weapons there with Rodgers, Jimmy Graham, etc. And they now have a running game. But it was a while where they didn't want to add pieces, and that's, of course, going to make it harder on Mike McCarthy. It's not all fair necessarily. But how you feel, and I know some Packer fans, how you feel about Mike Tomlin, Steeler Nation, how you think maybe it just ran its course, how maybe it's over, how, yes, there was success, but maybe he underachieved as well, all that. That's how Packer fans felt about Mike McCarthy. Okay, that's how they felt about Mike McCarthy, who eventually got fired from Green Bay, who eventually doesn't have another job. He was in some rumors with Cleveland, etc. They weren't good jobs at the time. I could see him missing those. I could see him waiting for the Pittsburgh job. That would be a great job for him to get. He's from Pittsburgh as well, like Cowher. You guys love that. It's a good job for him. I could see him wanting it. But he's an older coach. It's an older mentality. Yes, he's won before, but it's been a while. The fan base felt the same about him as the fan base for the Steelers feels about Tomlin. It feels like the same old story. I'd rather see a young coach. I'd rather see some assistant get an opportunity. I realize the talent that's there, but it is a young Steeler team. Maybe somebody closer to their age. And that's kind of the way of the world in the NFL now. And I also get that that's how Tomlin got his job. Tomlin was an assistant with the Buccaneers, okay? He wasn't a highly touted guy. The Steelers don't usually hire flashy guys. Cowher was an assistant, got the job. Tomlin was an assistant, got the job. They both won championships. You never know, but the Steelers have a good track record of who they hire as head coaches, and they're never the flashy guys. So McCarthy would be flashy. I don't love it. Steelers need fresh ideals. They definitely do. McCarthy, I think, is going to be too similar. It's too much. It's too much of an old head mentality. I'd rather get a new young guy in there, but they do need new ideals. I don't disagree with you there. And then I wanted to answer this one, too, before I go. In your opinion, is Gruden a better coach than Tomlin? I mean, are we talking right now? Are we talking career-wise? Right now, it's a wash almost, but you could argue that Gruden's had a very, very tough job as well to deal with. Obviously, AB in that drama, but they practice mostly without him anyway. But Carr's not a Hall of Famer like Big Ben was for Tomlin. The defense had some issues, and Burfict being suspended throughout the entire season now isn't going to help things. He was a good player for them. They haven't had the weapons there recently that even the Steelers have had, so he's had less talent. Even though around similar record, the Raiders weren't good last year when he returned. They're probably not going to finish with a good record this year, even though they're holding water so far with everything that's went on there. Now, career-wise, it's hard to say because Gruden left the field for 10 years and went into the booth. Maybe more of an impact on the game overall because of the time as a broadcaster. But they both came from being assistants. They both came from grooming great systems and great players. All those players in the Tampa Bay defense, the Warren Sapps, the Derek Brooks, Brett Favre, and the receivers on the offensive side of the ball for Gruden, who came as a wide receiver coach, whereas Tomlin was a defensive assistant with Tampa Bay under Tony Dungy, so they both came from being under Hall of Fame coaches. Mike Tomlin under Tony Dungy, John Gruden under Mike Holmgren. They both had a lot of success earlier in their coaching tenure. Both won one championship, only one. Tomlin's been to two. Gruden obviously only been to the one. Gruden got close with the Raiders too. So Tomlin's been close other years. Very, very similar resumes. Resumes probably would have still looked similar even if Gruden didn't leave for the booth. But we also don't know. Maybe he would have capitalized on something in the middle there. But he did get fired from the Buccaneers for lack of winning. He has that one title, but a lot of losing seasons mixed in. I would say overall career-wise, overall resume, overall production, you give the edge to Tomlin. I think the talent-wise, actually, he had more talent to deal with. Although Gruden had Rich Gannon when he was an MVP, Tim Brown, Jerry Rice, still very, very good, even though it was the end of their career. That great defense in Tampa that won that championship, one of the greatest defensive units of all time. Faced a team that he obviously knew well and knew their plays for that Super Bowl blowout. So it's very, very close in terms of career-wise. I'd give the edge to Tomlin on the resume, but who knows? Very, very close. Right now, also kind of close. And as I round things out here, and I welcome any more questions until I get done, but as I round things out here, and I do want to remind you guys that are here, I don't know if you're just chatting in general, if you're just watching in general, or if you're an avid fan, and I know some of you are avid fans and avid chatters, keep it with us and make sure to, as the banner says, click on the subscribe button. So if you're new here, click on the subscribe button, make it easier for us to get the content to you. The live shows, covering every team around the market, all throughout the channel. Everything uploaded as well. You'll get everything. And you get notified, so it'll make it easier. You don't have to worry about following anybody on Twitter if you don't want to do that. But this Steeler team is 2-4. Okay? You can put lipstick on a pig all you want about who they faced, about the difficult schedule. They should have won those games. They squandered those games, not enough points off turnovers. I get the injuries. I get the backup quarterbacks. I get the excuses, but every team has them. and you can't make them. And they still should have won more than they did. They should have beat Seattle. They should have beat San Fran, even with the situation they were put in. And then you wouldn't have this problem now. You still could get upset as the season goes on. Those wins are not guaranteed. Miami maybe is guaranteed, but no one else is guaranteed on that schedule. Yes, you beat Cincinnati handily, but maybe A.J. Green will be back in that second game. Who knows? Nothing's guaranteed. You'll win some games, but nothing's guaranteed. It is an easier schedule, though, but nothing's guaranteed. And you got to start Mason Rudolph if healthy, okay? You have to start Mason Rudolph if healthy. The Steelers team, again, to go against the optimism theory that many of you have, to be, I guess, glass half empty, or be a realist, as I am, only beat the Bengals, who are horrendous, and then beat the Chargers, who have been up and down. So, yes, the schedule's hard. Yes, they've had backups, but their wins aren't impressive. They haven't really beat anybody you're going to say it's, oh, man, a behemoth of a team. And the Chargers appear not to be that great. We'll see, though, how they finish, but we know the Bengals suck. But Mason Rudolph's been the better quarterback. Mason Rudolph has the better arm. Mason Rudolph appeared to be the better leader. He appeared to command his troops more. He knows the offense more. He won the backup job in camp, in the preseason. He has chemistry as well. Mason Rudolph starts if healthy, especially against Miami, to ease him in there after the injury. Love the Duck Dynasty. Okay. It's fun. I want Duck pictures again on social media. I might put him up there even if he's not starting, just seeing him on the sideline. Paxton Lynch, Switzer, etc. You guys are going to those guys with Mason Rudolph not healthy and under Devlin. That's a accident waiting to happen. That's horrible. Mason Rudolph's your guy, though. Mason Rudolph maybe could get this team into the playoffs. He maybe is that quarterback to do that. Devlin Hodges, it wasn't there number-wise. Touchdown, interception, under 200 yards, 130 some yards passing. Okay, still a concern with him as the starter. I don't have as much of a concern with Mason Rudolph as the starter, even though, of course, neither one of them are Big Ben. So I enjoyed the chat. I did. I see some of you are still here. Any last questions I will take here as I kind of, do my little close, promoting throughout the channel and throughout the family of networks that we got going on here. Want to make sure to remind all of you to hit up the family of networks. Hit up Pittsburgh Sports Now, Pittsburgh Hockey Now, Pittsburgh Soccer Now, SteelersNow.com, where, of course, our Steelers coverage is, where this show will be posted and will be. As well as PGHSportsLive.com for all of our video content, living there in website form. Hit us up also, Pittsburgh Sports Live on Facebook. A lot of our videos are there on Facebook, as well as all of our outlets there on Facebook. Give us a like. We'd appreciate it. At PGH Sports Live on Twitter. So at PGH Sports Live on Twitter. And for myself, at Mike Asti 11 on Twitter. At Mike Asti 11 on Twitter. And at PGH Steelers Now on Twitter. At PGH Steelers Now on Twitter. If I had to award a chatter MVP, I'm going to give it to Cecil here. He's been an avid chatter no matter when I do the show. He's always available. The rest of you guys, I feel like, are new this week. But we had chat activity, so I can't hate that. We had chat activity. We've had chat activity throughout the weeks. I've been pleasantly surprised with the live chat. So keep more of these. I'm going to keep more of these coming, as well as other shows. Oh, forgot to mention, I don't know why, it's the newest outlet we got going, and I do shows for them. I'm part of them as well, even if I'm not necessarily running the website like I am the others. I'm still helping them out. Call me a consultant, contributor, I don't know. Consultant I like better, I guess. I consult and I contribute. WVSportsNow.com, okay? WVSportsNow.com. I said temper expectations for Neil Brown. The season's been kind of going in the tubes. It'll go get worse with Oklahoma. But he's still the guy. I still do believe in him. And you got to temper the expectations year one. Mountaineer fans. And I get many of you Pittsburgh Sports Live, you might not be WU fans, but for the select audience that are, those shows have been doing well. Watch the shows, find them in the mic drop section on Pittsburgh Sports Live, and also WVSportsNow.com, one of our rockin' websites. You'll find that show there and all my content there as well. So again, hit up the family of networks, which now includes WVSportsNow.com. Find us on Twitter at PGH Sports Live. Find us on Facebook, Pittsburgh Sports Live on Facebook for your search. Like us there, PGH Sports Live on Facebook on the search as well. And find me at Mike Asti 11 on Twitter. SteelersNow.com too. Thanks to the science behind me. Thanks to Beaver County Auto. Many of you are half glass full. Many of you want to be optimistic. Many of you say the Steelers faced hard teams and they're going to figure it out. No, woe is us with the backup quarterbacks and the injuries. I hear you. It's not to say it's not valid, but let's be a realist. Their record is who they are. They're 2-4. Okay, other teams have problems too. Nothing is guaranteed throughout the rest of the season. Tuitt being injured is going to greatly hurt the team. That'll be a problem for the defense. Others need to still step up. And Mason Rudolph needs to be your guy, okay? Mason Rudolph needs to be your guy. He is the guy if healthy. I love Duck Mania, but Mason Rudolph is your guy. You can do your quacking and duck calls all you want, but do it for Mason Rudolph. So the Steelers have a long way to go. Other teams are going to be trying to figure things out too in their division. And they squander some games they should have won. So I don't know if I don't want to pour it out here and dump the water on our equipment, but my glass just isn't as full as yours, apparently.